That's the epitome of the shot we need. Thank you.
Research Center. And we also have a guest of us today from UN Women, a close partner of Kuwait and friend, Ms. Sarah Brun. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to Minister Al-Aqil.
Thank you, sir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be with you today and welcome every one of you who respond to our invitation to this side event where we shed the light on the national project of the State of Kuwait on the support of the implementation of SDG 5, gender equality and women empowerment. This national project came as an articulation of a new Kuwait 2035 vision of His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, Emir of the State of Kuwait, which sets the motion for the Kuwait National Development Plan, a vision that ensure a sustainable and prosperous future of Kuwait. The plan has established a set of goals and targets that will assist Kuwait to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. To this end, UNDP Kuwait and the UN Women Regional Office for the Arab States have collaborated with the General Secretariat of the Supreme Council of Planning and Development and the Kuwait University's Women Research and Studies Center to support the national program to accelerate the implementation of SDG 5 in the state of Kuwait. This project has set in motion longer-term transformative changes that will enable Kuwait to achieve the ambitious goals set under the Women's Empowerment Agenda of SDGs Kuwait. In focuses of three key areas, including, first of all, the enhancement of women's participation in political and public life. The second thing is women's participation in all sectors and enhanced through increased awareness and applications of gender-positive policies to promote women's participation, and finally, making data available to support elaboration of comprehensive national plan to address violence against women. Once again, I thank you all for joining us in this side event that showcases Kuwait's experience in the support of the implementation of SDG 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Al-Aqil. I'll now give the floor to Ms. Sarah Brun of UN Women to tell us a little bit about their experience working with Kuwait on this project.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Your Excellency, for your opening remarks. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, when we began this discussion with Kuwait a few years ago now, it was grounded in the notion that SDG 5, which is the empowerment of women and girls, is the very cornerstone of all the other sustainable development goals. Without the empowerment of women and girls, we cannot achieve the SDGs, and we will not achieve the SDGs. Without economic empowerment of women, without women equally participating in the labor force, GDP is lost. Without women in leadership, decisions that are made and policies that are implemented are not as diverse as they would otherwise be. And without women meaningfully engaged in peace and mediation processes, as we just heard in the event hosted by the Arab League, peace is less likely to last. Kuwait took this initiative and this leadership to develop the first regional program that is a standalone program on Sustainable Development Goal 5, in line with the Kuwaiti national priorities. In that regard, UN Women and UNDP Kuwait has been working very closely under the leadership of the government of Kuwait, and it's important to stress that because the leadership truly lies with our national partners and with the government and with Dr. Lubna, who will speak a little bit later about her experiences, and grounded in the policies that Kuwait already has in place in finding ways to enhance those and implement those across a sector of Kuwaiti society. It's been incredibly well received in country, as well as looked at by other countries in the region and elsewhere for potential duplication. It's successful in the sense that it is cross-sectional, in that it combines economic empowerment, political participation, and ending violence against women and girls, recognizing that you cannot have policies alone if they're not implemented. You cannot have policies that promote women actively engaging in the workforce if they are physically or emotionally abused in their homes and not able to engage in the workforce as a result of that. So the program is comprehensive, it's holistic in its approach, and that's also what is driving it and what's making it a success. We're very grateful to Kuwait for this partnership and also for their leadership to this program in Kuwait and regionally. And today also for the first time at CSW, we look forward to Kuwait sharing the successes of this program with you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I mean, Kuwait's a big believer in multilateralism and in the work of the UN specifically and all kind of international and regional groups. So we really appreciate the partnership that we have, and we appreciate your support in making all these things possible. And now I'll give the floor to His Excellency, Dr. Khalid Mehdi, the Secretary General for the General Secretariat of Planning and Development in Kuwait. Dr. Khalid.
Thank you, Sarah. There are, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, there are a few things that we would like to shed the light with regard to the government support for the implementation of SDG 5. I will go through some of the facts to start with. It's becoming evident now that the participation of women in political and economic decision-making is very well correlated of making better public policies and better GDP growth, as well as less debt for the country. Also, it's becoming evident as well that Kuwait women in the public sector, they are growing to 57%, making the largest contribution to the labor force in the government. However, we still lack in the leadership. About 12% of our decision-making leaders in the country, it's only being 12% of the number of women in top management and decision-making. In the private sector, it's not as good as well. It's also a 15%. Other facts include that the Council of Ministers include only 2 ministers, 2 Madam Ministers out of the 16. And in the National Assembly, there is only 1 member out of the 50 members, with a maximum number of 4 in previous years. These are facts that get me into the challenges and why, what are the obstacles, what are the resistance that receive for the less number of leading position for women in the country. Well, today I recall a speech by the Secretary General of the United Nations stating that even in the United Nations organization there are challenges resistant as well. It means that this is quite a global issue. The challenges that we have is related more than a culture, more than competencies, more than any other issues. It's related to mindset and belief of the women empowerment in leading positions. So, as a government of Kuwait, what are the things that we took as an initiative? We actually have 3 main national policies with a strategic direction. These 3 strategic directions and these public policies are: number 1, political empowerment; second one, economic inclusion; and social protection. As of the political empowerment, we carry out programs on public awareness, the importance of culture changes in order to accept the introduction of women in the decision-making process, also capacity building from individual perspective as well as institutional perspective. From the economic inclusion side, we do believe more companies are joining now through our WEP program, which is a program in collaboration with the UN Women, as well as the UNDP. Incidentally, we have 3-fold the number of companies signed before since 1 year. It means that we get about 18 companies right now, and there are more companies on the pipeline. I will leave Dr. Lubna to talk more about On the social perspective level, Kuwait is one of the advanced countries, having a very strong legislations, legal structure to support the social safety net. And in general, the Kuwait social safety net is quite thick, and there are examples of laws and rules in which women empowerment as well as people being in a very good social safety protection. Several programs and projects has been adopted by the Kuwait National Development Plan as a part of the Human Capital Development pillar, which is one pillar out of the 7 pillars in the Kuwait National Development Plan. One of these program is called the support of SDG 5, which is a support to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal, and it is implemented in collaboration with UNDP, UN Women, and the Center for Women Research and Studies. Another program we have is called the Women Culture, Economic and Sports Incubator. It's part of a Kuwait National Development Plan. The project is in progress, and it's done by the Public Authority of Sports and the Public Authority of Youth. Beside that, we have other youth empowerment program, including entrepreneurship. Kuwait set up one of the largest funds for SME, is around $7 billion fund for youth entrepreneurial activity as part of the Kuwait economic reform. At the end, there is one project that I didn't mention in many occasions. Maybe this is the first time I mention about this project. Part of our national plan is nudging for women, meaning that we are aiming to nudge the private sector to include more competent, qualified women in the board of directors and on the decision-making tables. In conclusion, as His Excellency, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations says, we have got our marches ordered. And I will conclude with this statement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahdi. And now I'll give the floor to Dr. Lubna Al-Qadhi, who will talk to us about her work as the head of the Women's Research and Studies Center and their work implementing SDG 5 in cooperation with the governmental sector.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and a greater pleasure to be talking about women moving forward. As Her Excellency Maryam Al-Aqid said, and His Excellency Dr. Khalid said, we are very lucky that there is a part of the Kuwait National Plan concentrating on women's empowerment. The Women's Research and Studies Center has been implementing this from 2017, and one of the plans was, as you see, our partners in this project is the General Secretariat for the Supreme Council for Development and Planning, UN Women, UNDP, and of course, we are housed at Kuwait University. The Women's Research Center started in 2010 as part of the strategy for women's empowerment. Going into the details of what we have done, one of our aims was political empowerment, another was economic empowerment, and the third, and very important, was fighting violence against women and doing a survey to get facts, so we have white paper policy. When we talk about political empowerment, what we did was we started a political incubator. For the first time, I think anywhere in the world, the government itself asked women who wish to stand for political office to come, and we would train them with capacity building. We had 100 women that applied, 60 completed it. In this, in political training, we had experts that were supplied by UN Women and UNDP. These women went into intensive training on campaign management, public speaking, lobbying, fundraising. 21 of these 60 wish to stand for the next election. We hope this would increase the number of women in the parliament. The rest wish to stand for political office in different organizations. Besides training these 60 women, we also had an exchange with a network that's called Ra'idat, and this exchange is of women MPs across the Arab region. These women came, and there was an exchange of best practices, what challenges they have faced, how they have reached the political offices in their different countries, and we hope that we could learn from their experiences, because there are many similarities in the Arab region, and of course similarities shared by women in general. Some of them are here with us today. Besides that, we thought that we also need to have the media as a partner. Media is very important in how they perceive women leaders, especially political leaders. They can move them forward or they can be an obstacle. Therefore, what we did was we had a media watch where we got personnel from the different television stations, from the various newspapers, and of course, social media. You know how social media can destroy a person. What we did was we did training for them on how they can cover gender issues by being sensitive, by being rational, by being, of course, overall unbiased. We are hoping, part of the political incubator, that we will have a monitoring global media watch in which we will see how women's issues are covered, how women leaders are spoken about, and what we need to do to get a media that is with women, not against them. Luckily, again, the government is with us. The Information Ministry also is with us. We are luckily not fighting against the tide. They are with us through and through. We also had economic empowerment. In the economic empowerment, we wanted to increase women, not just entry, but upward mobility in the political, in the private sector. Therefore, we wish to launch, and for the first time in the Gulf area, the Women's Empowerment Principles, which is an initiative for private sector. When we approached the private company at that point in October, the beginning of October 2018, only one company in Kuwait had signed up, which was Zain. And we had to approach other companies. Of course, as you know, private sector, they're very private. They think you want their money. So we told them, we don't want your money. We just want you to have women move up. You have the human capital, use it to make profits. So we were lucky that 10 major companies signed up at the Chamber of Commerce. The CEO signed. They have to go online and sign on the UN Global Compact. We had a representative from the region come and speak about why women in the private sector can be move the organization forward, how they can be partners in sustainable development. After that, we also had recently the Kuwait Stock Exchange ring the bell for gender equality, and that was a big step forward, because last March when we had the event for Ring the Bell for women's empowerment, the CEO of the stock exchange was not there. This time, when they saw the 10 companies, when they saw that this is something favorable, not just to the private sector, but to the stock exchange, and they wanted to be an example to the listed companies, on March 7th, we had the CEO of the Kuwait Stock Exchange sign, and this was the first stock exchange in the Gulf area, sign for women's empowerment. Now, what happens is after the signing, that's not all of it. We trained the 2 from each company with an expert from UN Women from the headquarters on how they can keep a track of the action plan. Every company chose 2 principles from the Women's Empowerment Principles. Some of them were on training and some were on increasing women in upper management. Overall, it was to the benefit of the company. It was for the global image of these companies and of women. So the action plan was formed in October. UN Women follows up to see how they're implementing the action plan. And we're hoping that few more companies on March 26th, there'll be more companies joining, and we hope to hit 25 companies, major companies in Kuwait joining the web. Not only that, we also are right now doing a study on women entrepreneurs. We want to see what are the problems these young women face in starting their own ventures, how the government, the National Fund, or how they can move. Some of them are home-based in the informal sector, because as you know, we don't have a tax system. How can we move them from the informal to the formal, creating jobs, having more visibility, and making more profit? So this study will again be a white paper policy that will help us help them to be more productive and thus achieve sustainable development. Besides that, we also have a study going on gender responsive budgeting. And this we did with 10 ministries on how there can be gender responsive budgeting in the public sector. As you know, more than 2/3 of the women are in the public sector. We want to see how government spending is in the public sector. So really, it was the economic empowerment, very holistic. We tried to see what we could do in the public and the private sector. And luckily, there has been a good response from both sectors, and we hope to have a better presence of women in upper management. This is a picture of the event we recently had, Ring the Bell for Women's Empowerment in the Stock Exchange. This is some of the coverage, because you know social media plays a big part, and UN Women was covering it. We come to violence against women. Here we did something that is very bold, not done in more than 3 Arab countries. We did a household survey on 2,000 households. 1,000 men and 1,000 women responded. This survey, of course, when it was done in Canada and some Western countries, was called Understanding Masculinity. We don't want to understand masculinity. We want to know the facts behind the violence. So what we did was we called it Understanding Violence Against Women. In this survey, different sectors of the government took part. The Census Bureau gave us a sample so that we could go to 2,000 households, and we had experts go there, gather the data, and get the facts on not just the incidents of violence, but also the attitudes. There were many questions asked by men and women. We think that sometimes childhood experiences affect behavior in older life. Therefore, we asked questions from men and women whether they had experienced or seen violence as they were growing up. We wanted to know how the national strategy to fight violence would be based on facts, not speculation. Luckily, one of the questions asked was what they thought about women being in political office. More than 60% of the men answered that they were favorable, which shows that they do feel that women in political office have been successful. Unfortunately, less were favorable about women bosses. They were not that favorable about women being their boss. They do not realize that nasty bosses can be of both sexes. However, it was good because here we were not just measuring attitudes, we were measuring incidents. And now, the way forward, we are planning with UNESCO to even see the cost of violence, because we believe that violence does not just impact a woman and not her family alone, but society, whether it's the health ministry, whether it's the workplace. And therefore, we need to know the cost of violence against women on the country as a whole, because we need to find a solution. We also prepared a gender justice report in which we saw what are the services available and what we need to do. So we can say that the government not just gave us a green light, the government wishes to join with us to find a solution to this problem that exists everywhere in the world. Last but not the least, under the patronage of the Amir, our ruler, Sheikh Sabah, Ahmed Jabr Sabah, we will soon be having, in less than 2 weeks, the Distinguished Women's Award. In this award, we want to showcase women that have contributed in different parts of the world by contributing to the society. And this award will be given to 3 women. It's an international award, it's annual, and it's a partnership of the private sector, the Supreme Council for Planning and Development, and also the Women's Research and Study Center and the UN organizations of UN Women and UNDP. The head of this high committee is the Minister, Her Excellency Mariam Al-Aqil. The women will be chosen from 3 sectors: the public sector, the private sector, and civil society, because we believe that women have contributed in all the sectors, and therefore the final choice of winners will be highlighted and presented on the 21st of March, coinciding with this month where we celebrate women all over the world. Thank you for your time, and slow and steady, we are winning and moving forward.